What's up, guys? Do you guys hear the audio? Thanks, Joachim. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Can be jiu-jitsu technique, can be training stuff, questions about Sweden or Norway, whatever. I'm in quarantine right now in Norway, so I can't have a partner, so it's more just like talking questions. Anyone have any questions? It's 12 people in the chat, just waiting on some questions. Hey, what's up, Shaheen Afshar? Good to see you back again, bud. So the question was, any tips on how to study matches? And then Whitney, hey Whitney, how do you prepare mentally for a competition? So I'll take Shaheen first. Any tips on how to study matches? Yeah, so it's kind of hard to study. You can only study a match based off of the positions that you know, right? So if someone plays a lot of collar sleeve, for example, or say you know collar sleeve well, when I study a match, I'm kind of skimming through a match for a position that I kind of know how to build off, right? So if someone's new to jiu-jitsu and they don't know many positions and they try to watch a match, and in the match, there's a lot going on. It's very hard to like take a lot away from that match, right? But if you say no close guard, and that's like the only position you know because you're new to jiu-jitsu, in that case, you may skim the match and you find the moment in the match where they're in close guard. And then from there, you can kind of pay attention to the grips that the person's making. So maybe they do like, maybe you grab a cross collar grip. And in this match, the guy grabs the collar grip on the same side and he does an interesting attack. You can watch that section of the match and kind of take some ideas from it that you can then test on your next time in the gym training in that position, right? So when I'm watching a match to watch an entire match and kind of like study the whole thing, it's kind of more of an advanced thing because you have to know all the positions. If you don't know anything about worm guard at all, then if you're watching the match and they suddenly go to worm guard, it's very hard to take much from it. So I try to always like, I'll skim it. I'm more advanced now, so it's easier for me to kind of just like watch the whole thing, go, oh, here they're in collar sleeve, here they're in double sleeve, here they're in De La Hiva, and I kind of pick where I want. But I would say in the beginning, if you're newer to it, try to skim the match for the positions that you know something about that you're building off, and then try to take references from that position. Whitney asked, how do you prepare mentally for competition? So for competition, for me, I just really focus on my technique. I think, and there's a lot of different ways to go about it. What I mean by that is a lot of people, they're trying to like think themselves into performing better than they are, right? So I think when you're competing, it's hard to think yourself into being like, let's say your skill level on a scale of 1 to 10 hypothetically is like a 7 out of 10. You can't really think your way into being an 8 out of 10, but I think you can certainly think your way into being a 5 out of 10, or like make yourself do worse than you normally would. So when I'm about to compete, I actually try not to think about too much, right? I just try to go through the positions that I know, like, okay, in collar sleeve, I like to do this, this, and this. When I'm in double sleeve, I like to do this, this, and this. When I'm, you know, playing De La Hiva, I like to do this, this, and this. And I just kind of review the positions. If I'm fighting a particular opponent that I know likes to play certain positions, I might try to review my series in my head a little bit more for that person. But it's hard to really look ahead in the match because I may be thinking, oh, when we start, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. But then when we start, he ends up, say I was imagining, okay, when we start, I'm going to play guard and do this, this, and this. Well, when we start, he may pull guard before me, and then I can't do the plan I made. So I try not to plan too much. I more think about my systems and options from the positions I get put in, and focusing on that kind of calms me down. I also try not to fight the stress too much. Like I try not to be like, oh, I'm stressed. Why am I stressed? I shouldn't feel stressed. I think a lot of people, what causes their anxiety and stress when they compete is that they end up uh, trying to fight the stress. They're like, I shouldn't feel awkward, but often I'll fight and compete and I'll feel really nervous, really anxious, and have some of my best performances when I'm really nervous and anxious. So if you could imagine that being anxious and nervous doesn't really make you perform worse, it's just accepted. It's just okay. It's part of the process. Then I think you fear it less and it actually dissipates it. So try not to fight the anxiety. Just accept that it's there. It's totally cool to be anxious and you can still perform really well with anxiety, if that makes sense. Um, is it possible to compete at elite level training 3 to 4 times a week? From, I can't pronounce that because it's all Russian symbols. Yeah, I think it's possible. Certainly, the higher level you get, the harder, right? Like, so if you're competing at a world class black belt level, you need to be putting in a lot of time, right? Now, it doesn't necessarily need to be all hard physical time. It may be that, you're training 4 or 5 times a week. When you train, it's like 2 hours of a lot of sparring, but then you need to be making up for that with a lot of technical study, like watching a lot of competition video, reflecting a lot, like writing notes and like being creative in your thoughts and thinking about your problems. But you need to be putting a lot of time in. So when you say training 3 or 4 times a week, I think it's possible. But if you're only training 3 or 4 times a week, you need to be putting in a lot of off the mat hours as well. So maybe you strength train, or maybe you do a lot of mobility work. Maybe you watch a lot of video. I mean, some of the biggest breakthroughs in my jiu-jitsu have been when I can't train and I'm just sitting there watching video at my house and I see one little grip difference that I see another competitor doing. And then I try to add that in with some of the stuff I'm already doing. It makes this huge breakthrough. So I think it's possible, but you need to train really smart, right? Um, have you played around with the 2-on-1 laser guard? So the laser guard, this is a question from Shane Avery, is where you have the cross sleeve and the armpit grip. Yeah, I've played that a bit in the past. I think it's a very good grip. I think it's not super sustainable. It's more of like a fast grip you use to attack. So I'm trying to think of like a good analogy. Um, it's maybe analogous to like when you play sit up collar guard or something. It's like if I was playing collar sleeve lasso, or where I have like the sleeve and the cross collar, I can let go to the cross sleeve, grab the armpit, and then you can use that to go up to like single legs. You can use that to try to pull quick triangles. There's a lot of things you can do with it, but it's not like you can't stay in that position for like 2 minutes and kind of think about what you want to do. So to me, it's more of like an offensive attack that you do, because once you start it, you can't really stay there for a long duration of time. So I think it's very powerful. It's a nice weapon to add into your arsenal, but I don't think it's like a foundational guard that you can kind of build everything off, because you can't get that grip and chill there for like 2 or 3 minutes, right? Whereas with things like collar sleeve, double sleeve, De La Hiva, even some of the lapel guards, those are positions you can kind of lock in and build off, if that makes sense. Sean Mannion, have you any tips for the close guard armbar and nogi? find it very difficult to keep their posture broken with the hand on their shoulder. So I haven't really worked my no-gi a lot recently at all. I find it really interesting. It's just I kind of try to specialize in one thing, so I'm way more interested in the gi right now. So I don't really feel the best to answer that question. But just intuitively, I would say when you're trying to control posture and close guard, the two main ways to do it are either like controlling their head or collar to pull the posture, or you can use your legs to control their posture with like a high guard. So if you do like a high guard where you're playing guard and you push your opponent's elbow to the center line and you can hop your leg up over the shoulder. Hodger Gracie used to do this all the time. A lot of competitors use it. I'm sure you could Google or YouTube it and you'll probably find some info on it. But when you get your leg over the shoulder, basically what you're doing is you're controlling their posture with your leg. So you kind of want to like isolate one arm, hop your leg up over their shoulder, and then like kind of reclose your guard with your leg over their shoulder. And I think that will make it a good way to control their posture. And then you can focus on isolating the arm more, maybe control the head and then shift to the arm bar. So long story short, I would say try to focus on setting up those high guard positions, but you can't always control the posture. I think that's a common thing that's said in jiu-jitsu. It's all about controlling their posture. But you can't always control their posture. If a guy's deadlifting, you can't always break him down. You have to adapt around it. So it may be that if you're in close guard and the guy's leaning backwards and posturing really hard, maybe you should try the hip bump sweep where you come up and grab behind their elbow and knock them backwards and try to threaten that first. And then maybe you get the sweep or a triangle choke from that, and then they drive back or they drive back into you, and then you've broken their posture and you go for the arm bar. So you have to kind of take what they're giving you, not necessarily just what you want, if that makes sense. Cool. Got a ton of questions now. You guys went from no questions to a lot of questions really quick. Let's see. All right. Rhett. Jai Kim. Can you use Google Translate? Because I can't read the Korean symbols, unfortunately. Rhett said, what are your thoughts on competing an adult in early 30s? I mean, I think it's totally doable. I think here, one second, let me get that video focus back. Okay, there we go. I think it's totally doable to compete in your 30s, right? The main thing that matters, sorry, I was trying to get there we go, focus back. Okay. I think the main thing that matters when you're competing is like the physical attributes. So all ages is it's something that affects the physical attributes. So realistically, age doesn't matter in a certain way. I mean, obviously it does, right? But what I mean by it doesn't matter is what matters is strength, mobility, endurance. I mean, you could say with strength, there's like strength and explosiveness or speed, et cetera, right? So it's strength, endurance, flexibility, your technique, and then maybe like your mental toughness or like your brain pattern recognition timing or something. So realistically, the only reason age matters is because it affects those things. So if you're 90, probably your explosiveness and strength, most likely, unless you're on a lot of drugs, is a lot lower, right? So that's really what affects you. So the question is, when you're in your early 30s, can you actually, how affected are your attributes, right? If you're in your early 30s, like how strong can you be? Well, some of the strongest guys in the world are usually in their early 40s if you watch The World's Strongest Men. So I think it's certainly possible to be very, very strong in your 40s. So I don't think strength is the major factor at that age, right? Endurance, probably it is affected a bit. I think the biggest effect is recovery. So it's how well you can recover after hard training volume. So if you're doing like, say, 2 times a day every day, I used to do that when I was like, early 20s, and I could recover. Now, if I train really hard, even 4 times a week, my body, it really struggles to recover from that, right? So I think the main difference is recovery. So as far as like performance on the day of the competition, I think you can be stronger than people who are in their 20s if you're 30. I think you can have just as good of endurance. I think if you've been training the whole time, you can have better technique because you're a little bit older if you've been training longer than them. And you can be super flexible. So I don't think it's a huge factor. It's more in people's heads. I would say, actually, though, fighting in the Masters in some ways could be harder because they don't even test for performance enhancers, right? So like if you're competing in the adult at Black Belt Worlds, at least people in the division know they have to be careful about taking steroids because they could get popped, in the end of if they win the tournament, right? So they actually might have to monitor it. But if you're in the Masters Worlds, they don't test for steroids at all. So and because you're older, probably the effects, like say you're like 50 years old, I would say someone who's 18 on HGH and steroids versus another 18-year-old has less of an advantage than someone who's 50 on steroids and HGH fighting someone who's 50 and not. Right. So it might even be that it's harder at that age group fighting in your division. At least in the adult, they have that, But at the end of the day, I think if you're in your early 30s, I think you can still do very, very good. You just have to focus on technique, smart training, and maximize your training in an intelligent way, because you won't be able to put the same volume of time on the mat. So you really need to maximize film study and that kind of stuff. Let's see what question we got here. Minstrel asked about the collar knee shield posture break that I was talking about in a previous video. I think, I have a video on my YouTube channel. It's me teaching in the gym. It's about pulling guard, pulling to De La Hiva guard. It's just like one of the ones where I filmed like the actual class, and I was showing it to the class, and it was about a really effective way to pull to De La Hiva guard. And I actually show it in that video where I use the knee shield and pull the person over the shield. So if you want to reference, look up that YouTube video, and I show it in that one. That'll help a lot. But yeah, it's very, very helpful. Let's see here. Sean Mannion is asking, have you any tips on the optimal way to learn from instructional content? I live in Ireland and won't be able to train for a few months at least due to COVID. Well, one sec, let me, that's fine. Yeah, so instructional content, the most important thing is picking a good instructional. When I came up early on in jiu-jitsu, there was not much good instructional content out there. So a lot of instructionals I saw, I would say, if anything, they could be detrimental, because what would happen is if someone puts techniques in the instructional that don't actually work because they're just trying to do filler, or maybe they don't articulate what they do good, you can kind of get in your head like, this is how you do the move, and you're trying to force it when it literally doesn't work. Right. So it's very, very important that you have a lot of trust in the person teaching you whatever they're teaching you. So I think nowadays there's way more instructionals out there than when I started. And there's obviously people who do really good instructions and really show what they do. Honestly, I haven't watched as much modern day instructionals as I should. I think Gordon Ryan's are really good. I think he really shows what he does. Of course, that's Nogi, but his instructions are really good. I think Ryan Hall's stuff's usually good. Of course, nowadays he's doing more Nogi. Man, apparently it's all Nogi. Lachlan Giles' stuff is really, really good. I think it's very organized. So you really want to look for people that are systemized. You have trust in what they're showing. And also keep an open mind. Understand, like when I'm showing something, I feel like I do a very good job of articulating what I do, but there's always something lost in translation. I may misspeak a little bit, or you may interpret differently the words that I used. So try to like follow what the instructional is saying, but also keep an open mind. It's not like the law of gravity. We're all figuring out jiu-jitsu and it's evolving all the time. So try to use it as more of like creative references for you, things for you to test, but the groundwork is done in specific sparring. You need to start in the position. So say you have an instructional on collar sleeve, okay? Whoever it's from. Watch the instructional, take the ideas from it, and then go do specific sparring in collar sleeve and spar from there, trying to, do the techniques and stuff, and then see if you can get it to work on someone who's resisting against you, right? And keep playing with it. But at the end of the day, if you can't do the technique in sparring under resistance, you can't do the technique. You don't understand it. That's the ultimate goal. All of the learning technique, everything, it's just about getting to the point that you can use this stuff in sparring under resistance when it matters. So anytime I see an instructional or a new idea, I'm always like, that looks interesting. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I'll play with it. And then I'll start playing with it. And sometimes it helps me. Sometimes like, I don't think this works at all. Right? Because maybe I'm doing something wrong. So I always keep an open mind. I experiment with things, but don't take instructionals like absolute law of physics, right? When I do instructionals, I try to make everything I show as like an entire system package. So you have like say 40 techniques that all go together and give you an answer for most everything that could happen. But even then, if you look at like all my new collar sleeve stuff, which I'll release relatively soon, all of that stuff is like completely different than I did like 6 months ago, right? So my game is always evolving, and yours should too. So try to use instructionals not as like a law, but more of like a guideline on how to develop. Hmm. Uh, yeah, good point. Bernard Hopkins was still competing at the top level in boxing from age 46 to 50, but you find a number of people still competing at elite levels in combat sports in their late 30s. Goalies peak at 33. So I think there's a lot of evidence for that. I totally agree. Um, that, hey, John, do you agree with me that Teodoro BJJ has the best half guard ever? I don't really know Teodoro BJJ, so I can't really say anything about that. And my half guard knowledge is honestly pretty limited, so I feel like I would probably not be the best person to talk about that. Um, da, da, da. So yeah, also you getting some training in with Espen and Tommy while you're up there. Yeah, that's why I'm here, is to train with Tommy and Espen actually. But I haven't trained with them yet because to enter Norway right now, they have a 10-day quarantine. So I'm actually not training with anyone right now. Right now, I'm just kind of like holed up at the house, trying to get some stuff done for the website I'm going to do soon, and just like kind of do more conceptual stuff, a lot of film study, trying to do live streams, maybe gaming a little bit too much. Yeah, but yeah, as soon as I get out of quarantine, which should be in like 7 more days, I'll be able to. I'm going to do some YouTube videos with both Tommy and Espen. Probably have them show whatever they want to, maybe some crab ride stuff, and yeah, it's going to be a really good trip. I should be able to train for after the quarantine, like 3 weeks with them. So I'm looking forward to a lot of exchange of ideas. It's going to be really fun. Um, uh, man, help me. Okay, Mr. Blue asked, "Love your content, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Help me a lot. When do you know a student is ready for the next belt? Criteria, time spent, age. Thanks." Yeah, so like when someone's ready to get promoted, I feel like that it's a very multifaceted thing. Like, I base it off of a few things. One is the person's technical understanding of the positions and their ability to use it in sparring under resistance. I'm very, very tough on belt promotions. I don't like to promote. Like, and it's not because it's like I don't like my students. All right. Let's make sure the there we go. Okay. I'm just very tough on promoting, because when I started jiu-jitsu, you really want the belts to matter. They need to mean something. So I see a lot of places will promote people because it's like, oh, they put their time in and etc. But the thing is, you can put your time in and do it wrong or not care enough about actually getting the stuff to work that you can end up not being able to use it. And I feel like by just giving people belts just because they put the time in, I feel like misses the point, right? Like if someone's going to become a doctor or an engineer, you don't really care that they put the time in. The bottom line is they need to make bridges that work or people die. Now, obviously, in jiu-jitsu, we're not building bridges that other people rely on it, but we're kind of training people to fight. And at its core, it's supposed to be a self-defense thing. So I feel like by giving someone a belt that they can't actually defend, there's some amount of like on a conceptual level, you're sending someone out into the world telling them they're prepared when they're not, right? So if the person trains for 5 years and they can't get to the level they can actually use these techniques in sparring under resistance, then they're either going to get upset that I didn't give them the belt and they're going to leave, which is fine, right? Or they're going to go, what am I doing that's not allowing me to actually use this stuff in sparring? And then they're going to have to dig deeper into themselves. It may be that they don't conceptually understand it well enough. It may be that they're freezing under resistance and they need to figure out how to solve that. It's going to force the right questions out of them. So performance in sparring matters a lot. They don't have to compete necessarily, because I understand some people don't want to compete, but you need to be able to in the gym use the stuff, right? That being said, of course, if someone's like 60 and they're training, I'm not going to hold them to the same standard as going with some like 20-year-old athletic person. Also, there could be people that are very, very good fighting because of instincts and natural athleticism. But if they don't actually have some understanding of the craft or some organization to their game, I also don't like to promote based off of that. So to me, it's a mix of like dedication and effort, performance in sparring, and understanding of the technical craft itself. Also, I would say, like, being a good person, like trying to help out the people around you, and those kind of things definitely reflect into it as well. And even the person's competition goals, right? If someone's like, I really want to be a world champion blue belt, and they've been a blue belt for 1 year, and I know they could probably be a purple belt, I'm probably going to give them a year to at least get one try in at it, right? I don't think you should keep them a blue belt forever until they win the purple belt, but I think that like allowing them a reasonable shot when they have a chance to win. I think everyone deserves one attempt when they're at the level they could win, right? So if I think someone's at the level they could win, and I let them try, and then they just, they don't win, they have a bad day, whatever, that's fine. Okay, then they'll still get their belt. But I think they should at least get a chance to try once when they're at the level they could win. Hmm. What's up, Jesper? Jesper asked, Jesper's actually from Sweden as well. And I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong because my Swedish is terrible. Jesper asked about doing the matrix from Squid. I honestly haven't worked it much. I don't use a ton of lapel systems. They're obviously really good. It's just that I like to be more open in my game and move a lot, and I feel like sometimes more restricted with the lapel stuff. I feel like especially versus much larger opponents, I feel like once they know the systems, it's easier for them to kind of stall you in the lapels. Whereas like if you really understand like double sleeve, collar sleeve, cross sleeve, keymaster, matrix, and all those positions well, I feel like you can be way more offensive and fast moving versus a much bigger, stronger opponent. But yeah, intuitively, the squid guard does seem like it would be a very good position to go for matrices from, because you're basically already kind of have a keymaster hook, and then you can, if you throw the other leg over, you can build off it. But I haven't really gone in depth on it, so I don't know how much that lapel grip maybe adjusts how you move and things. So it's hard for me to say. Chris Rock said, I have most of your instructional. My question is with posture. I have a hurt back. Me too. A lot of jiu-jitsu people do. I think Tommy actually just hurt his back really bad too. Uh, can these open guards be played with your back and head flat to the floor? Um, Honestly, it just depends on the position. Like some positions they can, some positions they can't, right? So maybe double sleeve, a lot of times you can kind of play back, but ultimately when someone postures up really hard, you're going to need to go with them, otherwise it's going to break your grip. So I would say if you're going to lock yourself into the idea that you cannot take your head off the mat much, then you're going to have to play a lot more positions, right? So the way my foundational understanding of jiu-jitsu is I build off of these individual positions, like collar sleeve, double sleeve, cross sleeve, like all these individual positions, right? And then jiu-jitsu as a whole is about learning to combine them. So an analogy I would use is like an orchestra and an instrument, right? You can play the violin for 30 years and be 30 years good at playing the violin, right? But you can know nothing about playing the saxophone or some percussion, right? So to do an orchestra, to have an orchestra, you need like, and if you were going to play every instrument in the orchestra somehow, you need to be good at all these different instruments, right? To be able to play everything in an orchestra. So probably to conduct an orchestra, you need to understand all the instruments reasonably well to understand how they're going to function all together, right? But you can't conduct an orchestra if you don't know how to play any instrument. Or if you only know how to play the violin, you can't conduct an orchestra well. You need to have a good, competent level in a lot of these instruments to make the whole thing work as a whole. And it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu. If you only know collar sleeve, you're going to be somewhat limited when the guy like postures a lot and won't give you the collar. Maybe you need to grab the ankle or do double sleeve or something. So like as you learn more guards, you can start learning to combine everything, right? Um, So I don't even remember the original question. What was it? Yeah, okay, back to your question about like the head on the floor. So the thing is, if you for some reason can't lift your head off the floor, then there may be things within double sleeve that I do, like where if the guy postures a lot, I follow with my upper body and hold it. But if that's very hard for you because your neck's injured, then you can stay with your back on the floor, but then when he postures, you have to let go because you won't be able to hold it unless you have like insane grips, right? So you won't be able to hold it. So then you'll have to adjust to like the ankle and build that way. So you might be able to build a game where you fix your head not coming off the floor, but it is going to be very hard, right? So I think in general, do whatever mobility work you need to do, whatever rehab stuff you need to do to be able to get your head up off the floor. But in the meantime, try to find positions you can work on that don't require you to have to use that muscle that much. Every time I have a really bad injury, I just find a position that I can work on that doesn't require me to use that muscle that much. And it could be something very subtle. I mean, it could be like, being in closed guard, you're on bottom and you have an overhook and you're just trying to work to get the arm out for the triangle. And you can go meta deep in that. I mean, you could spend like weeks on really small meta things, like looping out of a lasso. Like, do I go this way first or do I go this way first? Do I go this way with my hand or do I go this way with my hand? Like, there's all these little meta things. So as long as you're spending time understanding jujitsu better, it's not wasted time. So try to find a position that you can work on that doesn't bother your injury and just work on that stuff until you recover. All right. So, hi, John. Ever dealt with a popped rib? Yeah, pop ribs are terrible, man. I'm sorry. uh, yeah, any rib injury is like really hard to do jujitsu on. I know that's not the answer you want because so many positions like bother it, and it's really hard to isolate it. Like you can't like tape it up. It's very tough. I would say the same answer to the last question. Just try to find, just get with a friend that you trust and try to go through some positions and find a position that you think you can get meaningful work done as far as increasing your understanding that does not bother your rib. So that might be you're on top in the lasso and you're trying to figure out the best way to get out of the lasso, right? You want to focus on understanding, right? That all my training, like obviously I try to get cardio up for major tournaments and stuff, and like try to be in really good shape and sharp. But really, the majority of my time training is focused on trying to understand. That's why when I do instructional content, I'm so particular, is because I spend all day just like on the mat, like, okay, how does this feel? How does this feel? Okay. And I'm just interacting and trying to understand. So when you have an injury, try to find a position that doesn't bother you, that you can still get meaningful work done with resistance, where your partner is still resisting on some level. So you have some sort of reality to it. Because if you just try to do like light drills, that's almost useless too. Because if the person's not adding some resistance, you can give yourself false positives and you think things are working that actually aren't. Um, Jujiteka76 said, I don't have much flexibility. Do you think working flexibility is important more than workout? Yeah, I would say flexibility is probably more important than working out because I think, I mean, obviously both strength and mobility are important. And to a certain point, I think it depends on the person. Like if you're already hyper flexible, then you probably don't need to work your flexibility much more. And maybe you need to get a little bit stronger because, like, and strength doesn't matter in a lot of ways in jiu-jitsu, but strength relative to your body weight does, right? So, what I mean by that is like, um, if I'm holding someone's sleeves and they deadlift and I can hold my own body weight, it doesn't matter how strong they are. They could, be uh, Thanos or whatever, right? Like they can posture as hard as they want. I'm only holding my body weight when they posture up, right? So strength relative to your own body weight will unlock new movement patterns that you can do. So I think that's very fair to have an expectation level of getting reasonable strength relative to your body weight. That's good, right? But anything that requires strength where it's like if that person is strong enough, it breaks the movement, that's different. So holding a collar, them posturing up, and me being able to support my own body weight with it is scalable, no matter how heavy they are. But like something where it's like a tug of war, that's not scalable because if they're strong enough, I can't do it, right? Um, so But if you're already reasonably strong or just average strong and you're not flexible at all, then you're going to get a big bang for your buck with flexibility work. So I would say absolutely, hands down, for a lot of people who are unflexible, they would benefit more from if you had to choose training jujitsu or doing mobility work. I think some people might gain more from doing no jujitsu for 3 weeks and only doing mobility than they would doing 3 more weeks of jujitsu and no mobility, right? I think obviously you want to do both. That would be the best. I'm just saying an importance level. Like you could make someone's guard like 100% better with 3 weeks of good stretching if they're not flexible already. But to make someone's guard 100% better through technique might take a year or two, right? Of course, technique you can scale forever, whereas mobility at some point you're mobile enough, and then you can only do technique. But I think if you're really unflexible, that's for sure mega, mega, mega important. Let's see here. Great question, Seth. Please share a few aha moments throughout the years. Okay, so big aha moments and or pivotal game changers you experienced at Purple Belt. I think, yeah, focusing on just big aha moments in general is probably better. I think one was just the lasso. Like when I was a white belt, when I was like doing okay, and then one of the blue belts, an older guy, Steve Minky, who trained at the gym, explained to me when someone's passing your guard to this side to not use this leg to recompose, to use the outside leg. So using your outside leg to recompose. That instantly like started my jiu-jitsu career. I went for like overnight I started having a good guard and I started winning tournaments. So that like immediately changed my game and my whole career. If he hadn't given me that little piece of advice, I probably wouldn't have had a career in jiu-jitsu, because I would have like lost one of the matches that I needed to win, that gave me the confidence in the beginning to trust myself and etc. So I think that was probably a major one, is learning the lasso. And I don't mean the lasso necessarily at the lasso guard, but the idea of using your outside leg to recompose. That was major. Um, Another one, probably like the knee shield, like learning to use my knee to center the person when they're trying to knee shield to set up a knee cut. That was pretty major. I think more recently, the knee shield to break posture was a big one that I talked about before. I think conceptually, more recently, I always structure everything by these individual positions and systems. But after getting really good at that, really focusing a lot on trying to combine positions to unlock different attacks. Like there may be a position in underhook De La Hiva that's really good, but it's hard to get to when you play underhook De La Hiva. But you can use collar sleeve to attack them and set up that position perfectly, and then you let go of the sleeve and underhook their leg immediately, and then you're really deep on that attack. So learning to unlock those positions really quick, like positions that only exist between two guards or two systems, was a huge eye opener as far as like learning to combine things and unlock all these new attacks and different ways of offense. So I think that was a major, major conceptual one recently. Also, probably the idea of compartmentalizing things by individual positions and specific training them. That's pivotal. Anytime I have a problem with a guard or a passing style, I can isolate it and do hours of training in it and solve it in like a couple days. So that's huge. Let's see what else we got here. Got a lot of questions now. No problem, Seth. Happy it helped. Tips on finishing the Toriano when opponent does the Marcelo escape, sitting up on their elbow and scooting away. Yeah, I call it the flatliner. I mean, first off, this is from Callum Burke. The question is like, there's like the Toriano can be a bit misleading because the guy can have different grips on you. Like he could be grabbing both of my sleeves. He could have no grips. He could like have my collar. He could have my ankle when I do it. So let's presume the guy has no grips. I grab both legs and I just do a Toriano, right? For them to sit up, usually they're grabbing your sleeve. I guess they could have your lapel. If they have my lapel there, I feel like I probably might go the other side. So like if I'm here and he's grabbing the inside lapel and I'm passing this way, I feel like there he's going to try to sit up. So I might try to go this way instead. Another one is trying to get your body weight over their chest fast, right? I get my chest over their chest. So if they're here and you're coming at an angle like this, it's easy for them to kind of deflect it as you come up. But if you're really quick about getting your chest over their chest, they can't really push as you drop. It's like you're like this, right? So when they try to push, they're pushing you straight up, which pushes them into the floor. Whereas if you come in like at an angle like this, is really hard to do without a partner. If you come at an angle like this and they try to push you off, it's like they're pushing themselves away from you. Does that make sense? So if I'm here and someone's passing to my left, and I start framing as they try to pass, as they push at me, they're also pushing me away. I slide away, right? And that gives me more space to get my leg into play. But when I do Torianos, I try to get over top of them really fast, so that when they push, they're literally pushing straight up, which pushes them back to the floor and they stay static. Another thing that helps a lot with Torianos is trying to uh, close the distance fast so they can't get their arm straight. So those kind of frames only work if the person can get their arm straight. So a lot of times when I'm Torianoing, I try to get my shoulder extremely fast to their chest, because if they get their arm straight to block, then they have a good frame. But if their arm is even bent a little bit, if I get my shoulder here quick, they can no longer push. It collapses, right? So a lot of times when I do Toriano, it's a very subtle thing. I either go knee on belly or shoulder impact is what I call it. And when I see an opening where the guy's not already framed, I close the distance on that shoulder extremely fast to their chest. And when they try to frame it, buckles their arm, and then you get in deep on the pass. Leandro does that all the time. It's very hard to tell, because when you see it, it's like he'll do the Toriano and the person just kind of gives up, and it looks like, why is he doing that so well? Because most people just frame and block the pass, but it's because he closes that shoulder gap really, really fast. There was a clip I saw of this earlier today. I think it was Leandro Lo versus Luis Panza in their second fight. I think it was the 2018 Panzer Worlds. The Toriano that he ends up finishing the match with, you can see the shoulder gets in really quick, and then he ends up passing with it. Samuel Martins, good question. He said, good question. Any thoughts on understanding a system, i.e. De La Hiva, or say collar sleeve, double sleeve, whatever, like how the position works versus flow charting, reaction based? Have you flow charted your game? Does it have any value? Okay, so I only really flow chart my game when I'm making an instructional, and I would say it's kind of like a snapshot in time of how I'm seeing the position. Okay. The problem with general flow charting is that often you start locking yourself into these ideas. So you'll make some breakthrough where, like, you'll be like, okay, when I'm in collar sleeve, I want my knee shielded. And if I do, or say, no, I want my foot in the bicep. If he kills my foot in the bicep, then I have to lasso to push to get the foot out, or something like that. And that's like your bedrock skill that's always true, right? Once you start granting that that's true, then like you start closing your mind off to other ideas. Like, oh, maybe when he kills the leg, if I can knee shield quick and pull him over the shield, he actually can't trap the leg, and then it makes the left hook stronger, and then that unlocks this other attack, right? But if you start like locking in your algorithm or your flow chart, you can really restrict your learning. So I'm always kind of like creating these kind of general ideas in my head of what the position is about, but I understand that it can massively, massively change. And sometimes it's like, whoa, dude, if you like, there's one, like, it could be like you play a position a certain way and like it never works because the guy can do this one move, right? So you build your entire game off the fact that you can't do this certain thing because the guy has this one counter move. But then all of a sudden you find out, actually, if you were to grab it this way, right, then all of a sudden that move that was giving you a hard time, he can't do anymore, which then makes the entire position different, because now you can build off of all these different sequences and shit. So the one detail change can literally unravel an entire position to make it look completely different. It's like with general relativity, like the theory of gravity that Einstein developed, or discovered rather. Um, Before he discovered that, it was like all Newtonian physics and Newtonian gravity. And those calculations worked really, really well. And you could do a lot of stuff with it. But when you started to get to measurements like really big, like between stars, like the numbers were off a little bit. Like it didn't quite workout. It was like almost right, but like a little bit off. And then to fix those numbers, like he had to develop the idea of general relativity. And then with that, all of a sudden time can change. Like, you know, if you get close to the center of a black hole, like time is super slow and time is really fast outside. And like our entire understanding of the world and everything just completely flipped on its head, and everything changed as far as how we understand the world, all because of like a little subtle adjustment, right? So it's kind of the same way in jiu-jitsu. You can build an entire system and think you get it all, and then all of a sudden one little change in the position can make it function completely differently, right? So as far as, again, back to the flowcharting thing, you can, it's okay to do flowcharts as like kind of like, oh, you know, I'm going to write it down and kind of understand like generally like what I'm seeing right now, but try not to lock yourself too much to your flowchart, because as you start getting really attached to your flowchart, you start stopping yourself from innovating, because whatever current level you're at, your current understanding level is at in a position, you want it to be better than it is at some point. So as soon as you start locking yourself in, you start kind of stifling your innovation. Also, there's some like gray areas that are really hard with flowcharting, where it's like, okay, there's my attacks and then my defenses, right? But then there's like, you know, control maintenance things, and then like if the guy's posture like this, or he's like this, or he's like this, those little things can become really complicated. So at some point your flowchart starts to get insane, right? Because like if I'm playing collar sleeve and the guy has his elbow tight, his elbow can be tight on the knee, it can be on the outside, it could be on the inside, it could be tight but like not tense tight, or it could be like loose tight so I can pull it open. His leg can be bent, it can be straight, it can be bent with the foot turned out, it can be like half bent, and like all of those are different patterns. So sometimes my flow charts, like if I try to do one, it starts to become insane. I mean, like my current, if I mapped out trying to get most things that I think matter in my current collar sleeve series, it'd be like 80 videos, right? So, and that's videos where in each video I cover a lot of topics. So, I mean, they start to become massive. So I just try to spend a lot of time in the position and just kind of keep an open mind and evolve it over time. And then at some point, I'll try to write it down as an instructional. And again, it's like a snapshot of how I'm currently seeing it, but it's always evolving. So I don't think you necessarily need flowcharts. I just think you need to spend a lot of time in these individual positions and develop your understanding and awareness in those positions. Let's see. There was some question about Jiu-Jitsu X. Instructions on Jiu-Jitsu X have awesome flowcharts. Yeah, I totally agree. Right? I think, I mean, I haven't seen what they put on there, but I think as a learning tool for a snapshot of what I'm currently doing, I think it's useful to have to help give guidance. Just don't tether yourself too hard to it, because I think it may change pretty quickly. If you look at most sport, let me see if there's any new. Levi Kaiser asked, do you have any tips on how to scale back strength in sparring to improve technique rather than using strength to complete transitions? Yeah, lose more is the big one. So, you know, in math you have, sorry, let me get the, there we go. In math, you know, you have this concept of like a fixed variable, right? Or if you're doing, let's say, rather, you know, the scientific method, right? And you're going to test something, you have to have a fixed variable, right? Like one thing's the same, one thing changes. Because if you change, like, I don't know, if I want to cook a meal and then I want to see how it tastes and I put salt on it and then no salt, I can compare salt and no salt together, like against each other, and see which one tastes better. But if I do one time no salt and the next time I do salt, pepper, and a bunch of other seasonings, it's hard for me to tell what was the actual difference. Was it the pepper? Was it the salt? You know, it's too much to calculate at once, right? So you want to isolate variables. So to me, if the reason a lot of people end up like using too much strength or too much cardio or whatever is because they really want to win. But if you go, okay, I'm not going to like, I'm not going to allow my heart rate to go above a certain level, and you lock yourself into that rule, then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, I'm having to use too much energy. And then you get past, okay, what could I have done better to not have to get my heart rate up to that level? Right? Because if you roll with Hoffa Mendez, he's probably going to be able to beat you without letting his heart rate go up at all. And that's purely because of technical understanding. So if you, that's a good analogy to think about, right? Is like anyone in this chat who's like a purple belt or something and has been training for a while, you can go with a white belt and be like out of a drunken stupor, hungover, and feel awful, and probably roll for like an hour and not have any cardio issue at all, because your technical knowledge is so much more advanced than theirs. It doesn't matter, you're not being pushed, right? But then if you roll with a purple belt on the same level, you'll probably end up puking because you're so hungover, right? So similarly, if you just imagine you're a brown belt or you're a black belt and you want to beat another black belt, well, it just becomes so much more technical that you can beat that, right? There's an infinite scalability with the technique, right? Of course, it's harder, but I mean, that's the difference between guys like Mikey Museki and then like a normal guy, right? Is like his level of technical superiority is so high. So for me, for sustainability, I just always blame technique. When I'm training and if I lose or something doesn't go right and my cardio is bad or I'm not as strong as I used to be, it's always technique. Of course, strength and cardio matter, but for me, I just blame technique. Even if like my cardio is really bad, I tell and I'm fighting with like one of the best guys in the world. I'm like, well, if I was technical enough, I would have been able to stall him long enough to catch my breath so that I could have enough energy to then do the correct technical attack to sweep him or submit him, right? Always blame technique. So as far as not using strength when you roll, I would say isolate to specific sparring. If you do specific sparring in collar sleeve and you go, okay, we're going to go here and like, try to feel out how much strength you're using, you're going to have to feel it out. I guess worst case, just grab someone significantly stronger than you and tell them to use all the strength they can. And that's going to force it. So let's see. Yeah, I would totally do a jiu-jitsu X instructional. I was actually talking with Andres about it recently, so I just got to pick the topic I want to do, but I'm sure I'll end up doing one. Let's see. What was Callum's question? Sometimes from lasso spider against bigger guys, they do a massive throw by of the spider and it knocks my lasso off of the shoulder. Am I doing something wrong or how do I deal with this? All right, great question, Callum. So it's hard without seeing the video of you sparring, but my guesstimate is a couple things. I'm assuming your lasso shallow, which is fine. Your right spider hook, are you keeping it really contracted tightly to your chest, or are you extending it a little bit? If you're still there, Callum. Okay, well, that's good. Well, it's good and bad because that would be the answer, but since you're doing it and it's still happening, that's bad. Okay. So if I have a right spider hook, I'm just do the best I can here. Right, I want to keep this really tight. I'm not keeping pressure on the spider hook. It's more like I'm pulling something, right? So people always think the spider hook is extending, like sometimes it is, but a lot of times I'm more like pulling. So I'm holding the sleeve and I'm pulling it to me like this, right? So that keeps me tight. When they try to throw this by, I try to counter pressure with my left foot. That's the shallow lasso, right? So like I'd be holding their sleeve here, their arm is here. I want to counter pressure against their bicep, kind of like this, as they throw. So when they throw, I want to retract this in tight because it's going to be harder to throw. And I counter pressure with this left foot against their bicep or whatever. And then that allows me to keep my hips centered. Because what I don't want is my hips to get turned to the side. I want to stay flat centered flush. So when that happens and they try to throw by and I'm here and they lift, I pull this in tight and I counter pressure with the left foot and then I try to stay tight and always center your hip. You don't want to allow yourself to get turned to the side. So really focus. So really focus on, one sec. Really focus on using that left foot to pressure into their bicep and keeping your hips centered and really trying to maintain the centered position. It's really hard for me to explain verbally. That was the best I could do. If I had a partner, I could show you, but it's like, try to get the video focused again. There we go. I think it's okay. All right. No problem, Callum. I hope it helps. Shoot me a message on Instagram if you feel like that doesn't work or it's still difficult. You could send me a video if you want as well. Let's see here. Do you hinge at the hip when they posture up from collar sleeve? Like you do from spider? Okay. No, you could. depends on how you're playing it. One sec, let me plug my laptop in here. We're gonna move this way a little bit. All right. It depends on how you're playing collar sleeve. So my collar sleeve has evolved a lot in the last like 3 to 4 months. So classically, you could, if you're playing more centered, you absolutely could posture up when they do that. But I shield more now. So like I'm usually playing my collar sleeve a little bit on a side tilt like this. So if they try to posture up like this, I would angle my shin into their torso and pull really hard like this. And that it kind of acts as like a counter pressure against their deadlift. And I can usually pull them down off that. If you want to switch guard, when they deadlift like that, they can't have a lapel grip with this hand because they're deadlifting. So then usually you can cross sleeve grip, switch your left hand to the ankle, and you can hit a really good deep lace cross sleeve to the back. And that's one of the strongest back takes in jiu-jitsu. If someone deadlifts off the collar sleeve like that and you get the cross sleeve, it's almost an instant back take if you do it right. And with that collar sleeve series with the shield too, I would unlasso when they deadlift. So then the left foot almost is like a daily hiva, or it could even tap off the floor, and you just want to pull them really hard over the shin shield, right? That's mega, mega powerful. What's up, Kevin? Well, dude, actually, Kevin, I might as well talk to you about this now. I'm going to sell my PC and my MacBook Pro, and I'm buying a gaming laptop, actually. So, because I found a gaming laptop, you can tell me what you think about this, but I found a gaming laptop that's like a lot more powerful than my current PC. And it can run the VR and Valve Index and everything. And since I travel so much, I want to have it with me. And the guy here who does like video editing and stuff said that it's way easier to upload because of the processing power. So I'm getting this like ridiculously high-end gaming laptop that runs the Valve Index. It's like a lot stronger than my current PC and stuff, and doing that instead. So now I'll be able to game from my laptop anywhere I want. So the Age of Empires Instructional will be coming out soon. For those that don't know, I used to play. Okay, Kevin, do you disapprove of this decision? Yeah, for those of you that don't know, I used to play a lot of Age of Empires competitively. What's up, Adolfo Foronada or Foronda? Yeah, no, I totally consider that minstrel. Like I know the PC, like the home PC is going to be way better like for the dollar, but because I have like a MacBook Pro and a personal PC, I end up like always traveling with the Mac, and then I can't game with it, and then there's a lot of other things with it. So I figured I'll sell the Mac, sell the PC, and just go super super high end on the gaming laptop, and then be able to play it and take it with me. So I understand that price per power per price is way worse, but because I have the PC and the MacBook Pro, I just feel it's better to condense it into one, and then I can take it with me everywhere. And I often go on these like, like 2-month trips places and stuff. So I just want to be able to take it with me. I used to play like a deathmatch post Imperial a lot back in like the early 2000s. So I did just a lot of like Hun Wars, Mayan Wars, Mongols, stuff like that. Let's see. Yeah, my gaming career in Nashville. It was big days. Hello, John. Any tips to avoid getting back pain when playing guard? I know my main problem is flexibility, but those that mean that I should not play open guard until I get flexible. No, I mean the back pain question is like that's hard. It's a bit above my pay grade. I mean, I'm not an expert on mobility and back pain and stuff. What I would say is like you kind of have to become your own expert. From my experience when I had really bad back pain is that you're going to go online, you're going to find advice that's uh contradictory of each other everywhere from experts. Like you'll find this guy's an expert and this guy's an expert, and this guy says if you do this, it's going to help you, and if you do this, it's going to hurt you. And then this guy's an expert with all these people saying he's right, and he's going to say the exact opposite. He's going to say that what this guy said is actually going to hurt you, and what this guy, and it's so confusing. So the advice I would have is like look at a lot of references, try a lot of different things, and see what helps. Right? See what stretch helps you personally. Because if you have a back injury, it's specific. Like you could have a slip disc, but like a slip disc like out this way or out this way or out this way or this way, it can be different for everyone. And what your body responds to is going to be individual. So try to look at a lot of stuff, find a lot of experts, test things, be very careful, listen to your body, and don't overtrain. If you feel like your back is sore that day, still go in, but tell the instructor, hey, I got to go really light. Do light specific work, just drill, do things like that when you need to recover. If your instructor doesn't want to listen to you because he's like, you need to push through it, then fuck him. Because like that's such an easy way for people to hurt themselves like seriously long term, right? I blew my back out for 1.5 years because of that. And it's just so easy for someone who's not in your body to be like, you got to push, right? But when you're actually like having like neurological damage and stuff down your leg, it doesn't matter. That whole like machismo tough thing is stupid. Okay. Of course you have to know when you can actually push, and maybe you're using it as an excuse, but only you know that. So you have to trust yourself. So look up the experts, look at different exercises, different stretches, and try to be careful. As far as mobility, I don't think you have to be really, really flexible to play open guard, but if your back is killing you all the time, that's not right either. You need to figure out what's causing that, I think. All right, guys, let's do one more question and then I call it. Appreciate everyone joining. These are really fun. Even if I don't have a partner, I feel like you can still get a lot of good value out of these questions. Okay, let's see here. I'll take a couple questions. Noah Carlos Rodriguez, did I answer your question? Okay, I did. Yeah, happy to answer it. Okay, let's see. Question here. Well, quick one here. When is your new guard DVD coming out? You mean the Vice Guard, or do you mean just like my own instructionals? Vice Guard should be getting released really soon on Grappler's Guide. If you guys don't have Grappler's Guide, it's a great website. I mean, it's like a one-time fee, lifetime fee, and then it's just like tons and tons of content from like Mikey and everyone else is on there. It's a one-time fee. I have a lot of content on there. It's a great site. If you end up joining, use my discount code. It's listed on my Instagram. But the Vice Guard should be up on there soon. And then I'm going to be releasing a lot of my own instructionals soon on my own site, which should be up in like a month or so. And then as far as the last like technical question, hey, John, a question about positional sparring. Usually we just roll now during quarantine. How should we structure the positional sparring time wise and stuff? So it's really up to you, right? Like in my ideal world, I think everyone has to train their own way to alleviate what's confusing them. Okay. So for me, my favorite way of training is come into the gym 2 hours. There's a lot of people there with skill, and then you just put the timer on like, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And then you can just use it as you need. Okay. Because one person may need to spend 2 hours just trying to figure out how to finish a triangle choke for themselves because they struggle finishing triangle chokes. And they may need to they go with one guy and it's good, but that guy doesn't do the defense that's giving them a problem. So they need to go with this other guy and do that, right? But someone else, maybe they're really good at a lot of positions and they're trying to work on how to combine positions, right? Maybe someone else that day wants to really push their cardio, right? And they're not worried so much about technical development. They just want to push their cardio really hard, right? And then maybe someone else is trying to like invent a new like passing series or whatever, right? So everyone's going to kind of coming in with different goals. So as far as like that goes, I kind of like, and again, you have to control, I don't know how much you can control your own training, but in an ideal world, I like just like a timer on, let people use it as they want. And then I kind of set my own personal goal for the day. So for you on a personal level, it depends on where you feel like you're struggling in your game. If you feel like, oh man, my whole open guard as a whole is just not very good, then you may go, okay, well, I need to develop a couple of open guards I feel comfortable in. So pick one, maybe collar sleeve, maybe double sleeve, and then pick it and then get some content on it and then start specific sparring in that position a lot and then developing it until you get good at it and then pick a new one and then pick a new one, right? So then you slowly build over time that, right? And then you may like get good at the collar sleeve, and you decide for a little bit, oh, I just want to try to mix collar sleeve into my normal rolling and see how it goes after you get pretty good at it. And then you start rolling, and then all of a sudden collar sleeve naturally comes in and stuff like that. Let's see here. What did Callum maybe try Tommy Langer and Pedro Ramalho? What was best people to watch for your style of lasso spider? None of your masses are on Flow, John. There actually is some on Flow, but you need to like use Google to find it. I think like Flow's search engine is like really poor. Can't wait for your new graphic site stuff. Yeah, thanks, bud. I appreciate it. Best people to watch for your style of lasso spider. None of your matches are online. So who does lasso spider a bit like me? Paquito's got an amazing lasso spider too, but he does it a little bit different. He does a lot more leg extension, which I actually really like too. It's just that you have to know how to tactically add it in at right places, right? So there's different ways to play the position. And I think the leg straight is a very powerful tool as well. You just need to know where to tactically use it and add it so you don't get yourself thrown. But I think it's better that you just watch as much spider as you can. So Paquito, Pedro Ramalho is obviously good to watch for spider. I saw Hidalgo playing spider the other day, and he actually played it exactly like me. He was fighting Buchecha, and he played it with the knee super tight like me, but I don't think he plays guard that often because he's always just killing people on top or with judo. Who else plays it really like that? Honestly, I can't think of many good video clips of someone playing it like me, unfortunately. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm drawing a blank. John, please be a guest on my BJJ podcast Forever White Belt. Sure, we can set it up. Shoot me a message on Instagram, and we'll try to set it up here sometime soon. Yeah, narrated rolling content is super useful too. I'll try to do more of those. The thing that's difficult with narrated rolling is that I almost think you have to do it based off of a position. So like if I narrate myself doing specific sparring from collar sleeve, it's easier. But if I try to narrate an entire match, there's a lot of presuppositions in it. Like, it becomes very, so I feel like it's easier to kind of like lock it in. I was thinking about doing some of these more in the future where more what I would do is I would give almost like a prerequisite to watch the video analysis is like these instructionals. So I'd be like, okay, this video analysis, to actually understand this video analysis, you need to watch these 4 videos so that we're on the same page about this system. And then you can watch it in action to see. That's kind of more how I think you have to do it. Because like, for example, I can't watch Bernardo Faria roll and be like, oh, here he should have lassoed because it did it, because it's like, it depends on what you want to do. Bernardo Faria is great at deep half, so that's a great thing to go for. Right. But there's so much option in jiu-jitsu. There is no right answer. It all depends on context of what you want to do and your current skill set. So that's why I think doing it based off of specific positions is the best way to go. No, I didn't get to watch the Polaris, but I saw that Team Europe dominated for sure. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot for tuning in. I'm going to try to do another one tomorrow. Really appreciate it. And let me know if you guys have any requests or questions for the next one. Thanks a lot.